Hello, everyone. Welcome to Agile Nova. I am excited to have Toby Rao with us today. He is going to be talking about AI and Agile delivery. He has been someone that I got to know over the past 15 years at Agile Nova. We met there, and then now he is running his own Agile meetup called AI Agile. Yeah, Agile. You can.
I created the word, so it's AI plus Java. We're going to talk about it.
All right, welcome, Toby.
Thank you, Salah. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm excited to be part of Agile Nova after so many years. As Salah mentioned, um, the my first Agile meetup was at Agile Nova. I learned so much there, and yeah. So for those of you who are not from the DC metro area, um, Agile Nova used to be in Tyson's or Vienna, which is like 30 minutes non-traffic hours, but maybe an hour and 15 minutes in traffic hours. And I said to myself, like there are so many people who live in Ashburn, which is the suburbs. I'm like, we need an Agile meetup here. So that's how Loudon Agile Network started. And last year, we kind of knew that everything is going towards AI. So um, we uh, changed it slightly, and from Agile Network, it became Agile, which is AI plus Agile. All right, so that's the background. So I serve as an AI COE lead as well as director of R&D operations um, for a global company that focuses on mainly aviation security, CMMC, FedRAMP compliance, and we have offices in India, in the UK, in Cincinnati, and in Herndon, which is in Virginia, outskirts of Washington D.C. And for the last year and plus few months, I've been heavily involved in AI transformation. My past was more with agile transformation and learned quite a few things, areas where, transformation is transformation versus, oh no, AI transformation is very different. It's very dynamic, it changes very fast, and, new learnings to apply. And so today I'm going to talk about some of the things I've learned, some of the things where we have struggled and have gained success, and some of the areas we're still struggling, and would love to make this a dialogue, hear from your experiences, and I'll share mine. So the topic today is AI plus Agile for optimizing delivery. Um, so no different than in the past. I mean, we've seen this with any transformation. I mean, even before AI, this was really true that teams are constantly under pressure to do a whole lot more than you have the budget for, you have the skills or the capabilities for, or time. And so uh, the AI, in the AI realm, it's even more evident. The investments are different, and the pace at which the transformations are expected to happen is a lot more faster. The challenge that I see with this is that, you are trying to upgrade a train which is on the move. I mean, there are no organizations that I can think of who can say, hey, we were doing X process before, we are moving to Y process. Let's stop all production for 6 months or 9 months, and we're all going to learn new ways of doing things. And then once we have learned, we'll go back to start manufacturing again. That's impossible. That cannot be done, right? And I'm sure all of you know this. Um, so the challenge is that, at least in the DC area, we are seeing a lot. in the federal space, and I'm sure the same thing is happening in the commercial space. I'm in the quasi-government area, where highly regulated industry. We're seeing, a lot of shrunk budgets. The way organizations, or at least the government, used to do the procurement has changed, and it's just the amount of money that organizations used to get is not the same. Um, with AI, a lot of people have a lot of misnomers about, oh, you're going to do AI, you're going to deliver really, really fast. They fail to understand that in the beginning, there is a learning curve, there is going to be chaos. So the expectation is that AI teams are going to be delivering very, very fast. Um, and then the problem also is that, as you're going to see in the next couple of slides, is that as the processes are changing, teams need a little bit of time to absorb the change. Otherwise, it just becomes change fatigue. Um, so that's the context. All right, so let's look at AI initiatives. This information is pulled from the Global AI Forum. This is as of December or so last year. The numbers might have changed a little bit, but I think it's still trending in the same direction. So, how many of AI initiatives actually go from pilot to production? Um, we see so much hype, so much AI slop on social media, including LinkedIn. We hear a lot of success stories, and then we also hear really, really inaccurate numbers when it comes to failures, because somebody's trying to sell snake oil, somebody's trying to sell some sort of a framework. And the funny thing is, it's also interesting to see how many people have suddenly become experts in AI, right? And so here are some numbers. This is from real research. It says that 42% of companies, they had to abandon, right, their AI initiatives in 2026. I'm not going to read all of these. There is a very high number, like 95% sounds a little bloated, but they saw very, very little or zero ROI on AI initiatives. So the question then is, whether you should go forward and use AI or not. And my takeaway from real experience is, it's not actually AI. It's not the technology that fails. The problem is that people don't do enough prep. People do not uh, get their teams ready, or their data or infrastructure. Is all of those things that are needed for AI to succeed. I mean, we spring just passed, right? And for those of you who are gardeners, you'll bring a cutting from a friend, or you'll put a seed um, to germinate and grow. Uh, there's nothing wrong with the seed or with the cutting, but if it doesn't get the right amount of water, light, or time to grow, and once it's germinated, if it doesn't get enough nutrients, it's going to die. So it's same. It's the metaphor is that, but um, same thing applies to any new initiative, right? Just germination is not enough. You need to really nurture and give the care and the TLC for something to grow. So I'm going to fast forward, and I didn't realize, Salah, that this was the first AI presentation in your group. Um, but I'm going to move really quick to the ground reality of, it seems like just recently that everybody was still talking about prompt engineering. People were just still talking about Gen AI, and agentic AI seemed like a thing of of the future. Um, at least I didn't expect for us to move from basic concepts to agentic AI so quickly. Um, Honestly, in around October, November last year, I heard about cloud AI. I had never heard about it before. And I heard about people saying, "Oh, this is actually pretty complex. It's pretty difficult, but it's really good." And come January, uh, our whole world changed when it comes to AI with everything that Claude can do. and it's just global. It's just the impact is pervasive. And so now what I'm seeing is a lot of teams don't just have humans, they have humans and agents doing the work, right? So that's the current reality, or the current uh, space that some of my talk is going to be focused on. And I realize that there are a lot of organizations who are just starting, but it's also important to know what's happening in and around the world in our current times today. So I'm going to ask three very important questions, and this is a small group, so hopefully we can have a conversation. Um, so, so let me ask the first question. Um, are user stories still the right unit of work when AI can spec, build, and test in just a few hours? What do you guys think? Please feel free to unmute.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting topic. I see a lot of people investing a lot of work in, oh, Scrum is dead, Agile is dead, da 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 da
Yeah,
da, that kind of thing. You know, when you actually read the Scrum Guide, it doesn't even mention code.
exactly.
All it is a story. So you can make a story of any size you want. It doesn't actually mention epics or anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the issue here is, are we being clear about what we want?
Mm-hmm.
And are we, it's all the same good stuff. If are we cutting it into smaller pieces so that we know where we're headed? It's kind of comical to me, by the way, how people are talking about one-shotting 100,000 line code bases.
Yeah.
Okay, you can do that. If it takes you 30 iterations to get what you want, is that actually something your company's going to tolerate from a price perspective? I think not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and as I say, I'll land my plane there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You got it. Yeah, great discussion. So, and you're going to see in the next subsequent slides as well. Um, I think user stories are still the right unit of work. I think we just need to change how we write it. In the past, we wrote it for humans. In our current or future, it needs to be written, depends on what your team is, how many agents versus how many humans. It has to be written for the person who's going to be doing the work. And by person, I mean both human as well as your AI agent. And so the next question is, do 2 week sprints still make sense when AI can deliver everything really, really quick? So the 2 week sprints, and again, please don't misconstrue this as an anti agile discussion. It's just that we're looking at real problems, and as mature uh, process people and mature leaders, we're looking at how best can we adapt things so that we can optimize delivery, right? That's all. So I'm not questioning whether 2 week sprints are bad. No, is that still the right? So does anyone have any opinion on this? All right, I'll share with you in the next subsequent slides some of the experiences I've had and what we are doing, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways
Yes.
from that.
Sheila has
Oh, hey Sheila, go ahead. Sorry, I cannot see
Yeah, I
chat
just
window.
put my hand up. A few weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, 2 week sprints are fine. But I've been working with somebody on something that for a volunteer organization where we're using AI. And based on how quickly things move with that,
Yeah.
I would no longer think that
Oh,
I'm not
good.
even sure sprints are the right thing to do.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it might be more continuous delivery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're spot on. Perfect. Thank you, Sheila. All right. So I'm
Joel.
going to skip the third question. This is more about estimation. I'm going to skip that, but yeah, I mean, the
We
question
have
is if, go ahead.
yeah, we
I
I
cannot
think
see, Salah,
yeah,
I cannot see. So yeah.
Joel, do you want to chime in?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I do a lot of education stuff along with the practical, and so the Scrum Guide I kind of know really well. There's nothing in the Scrum Guide that says it's 2 weeks either. It says a
Yeah.
maximum of 4 weeks. A lot of teams I work with, forgetting even about AI, as they get their DevOps act together, it makes more sense to run a 1 week sprint if you can do really
Yeah.
fast delivery.
Absolutely.
And there is
Absolutely.
nothing, absolutely nothing in Scrum that says you have to wait to the end of the sprint to deploy anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the whole point of Scrum and Kanban, they're both continuous improvement frameworks.
Absolutely. 100%.
And so the
Yeah.
point is to keep checking in for like, how do we do improvements? They
Hmm.
can both be containers for any kind of work. They, yeah,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
but it's like I'm watching the industry churn on this, and it's just it sort of shows. I'm sure you feel the same way, Toby, that it shows how little people understood the basic concepts in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. There are process haters. There are framework haters out there, Joel. So yeah,
And
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that's what I see as well. It's like the consulting answer is usually it depends, right? So I think Toby, you mentioned earlier, it's not the AI or the initiatives that fail. It's how people respond to the change, right? So
Yes.
I see companies still doing traditional development, so having a check-in every 2 weeks or every 1 week, depending on
Yes.
how often they
Yep.
wanna align, that might work for that group. But for other groups or other companies who are more advanced and they already have agents and on their team, then maybe that's that they need a different approach.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So the next question, so I'm going to talk about this a little bit. So if AI writes the code, what are we estimating, right? So the estimation was done, at least in the traditional format or even with the Agile format when we are doing relative sizing. Um, it was based on human beings doing the work. And something that I experienced when we rolled out AI-enabled software development was uh, teams were doing 2x, 3x the size of quantity of work they were doing before. And that's because they got to a certain level of maturity and AI was doing so much of that work. And so the question is, do we as humans estimate the work that an agent is going to do? And are those estimates even worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the question. I will hold that answer. I'm going to answer that when you see some numbers. But what I've found out is that no, you need a hybrid approach. You cannot Humans cannot do the estimation. At the same time, we cannot leave the estimation to the AI tool that you're using either. All right. So there are multiple frameworks out there, as you can imagine. Whenever a new technology, a new way of doing things come, every big consulting company comes up with their own frameworks. So there is a 5 stage framework. There's a 7 stage, etc., etc. Everybody has their own flavor of of frameworks. Um, this I find pretty easy to understand is five. So let me just quickly talk about these. So generally speaking, again, every organization is different. It depends on the region, depends on the industry you're working in, the size of the organization, how much they're investing into it, etc., etc. A lot of variables, but in general, these five are pretty standard. So I'm going to talk about it. So the first one is experimenting, where an organization has done their basic research and they're running their first pilots, and they have some solid use cases, and they've started. Everybody's excited. There is a little bit of pushback, there's a little resistance, and they're just trying to get the ground set up for the rest of the journey to take place. So it's pretty beginning. Um, and then one other thing to think about is that most of the organization is still delivering um, products and solutions just the way they did before. And a couple of teams have started working with AIs kind of like on the side. So that's experimenting. Next is adopting. This is where they moved past the pilot and they had some lessons learned, and they have the tools in place, they have some workflows in place, and they're moving forward. So instead of just a couple of scattered teams, they have more number of teams that are working using AI, and they have some sort of a rough idea how to do things, but they don't really have a solid delivery model yet in place. So that's stage two. Stage three is optimizing. This is where they have refined their workflows. They have a little more maturity because they've done X number of iterations already. They're seeing that AI is now delivering value. Some of that resistance has faded, and then they're seeing that the hands-on keyboard folks, the developers, the testers, the analysts, everybody is taking a real solid interest, and they're going beyond just using AI for the basic stuff. They've started using it in multiple places, and they're seeing the result, right? Maybe they have some GPTs in place, and they have the data and the architecture in place. They're really starting to see the results, and now they're tweaking it um, to optimize for their own organization, because it takes X amount of iterations of experimentation, then comes to maturity. The next is the transforming part. This is where the organization categorically has changed the ways of working. It's no longer working in the ways they had before. You can see it in different tiers of the organization, and AI pretty much you can see AI in everything that they do, right? Whether it's documentation, whether it is development or testing, even writing user stories, and even after production, things have gone into production to do trend analysis, etc., etc. So you are seeing it in everything that they're doing. And the next is scaling, right? This is an AI embedded organization. So nowadays they call it AI native, AI first. So everything they do, they start with AI, and this is where they see huge returns on investment. So these are the five stages. Now, before I move to the next slide, where do you think most of the organizations are today? Stage one, two, three, four, or five? We are just a small number of people, so feel free to unmute and speak briefly. Or if you want to put it in chat, Salah, you can read it out to me.
I see. Sheila, you have
Yeah, I think most of them are still at stage one. They may be fooling themselves into thinking they've advanced beyond
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Joel, what do you think?
Boy, it really depends. What I'm actually doing is working with developers on how to use AI on the day-to-day level, as opposed to more of the larger systems kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And what's surprising to me is the number of them that don't actually recognize that they are language models and they can work with them that way as opposed to just code creators.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
But
what's
I
your
guess
answer?
that would all
One
be
or two
that would
or
be
beyond?
experimenting then, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, one. Okay. Bridget?
I'm gonna say one.
Okay. Wow, you guys are a little negative. All right, no worries. All right, so I'm showing you a new slide. So pretty much everything that I talked about. Um, so actually, it's a little better than y'all thought. Most organizations are, I would say, between one and two, but there's a large number of organizations which are at level two, where they've gone beyond the basic pilots, and they're maturing the practices. I mean, you saw earlier 42% of teams in 2025 abandoned after stage one, but there are so many organizations that are on the agile journey. So despite that 42% fall, there are a good number of teams that made it to level two. So now let's examine like what might be the barriers because of which organizations are not going beyond pilots, or once they are at level two or stage two, why are they stuck at stage two? So I think it's important to look at what might be the barriers. So there are, at least from my experience, there are three broad categories of barriers. The first one is structural, right? So the structural barriers, if you just think about it at a high level, is that they they did not make changes um, the way the teams operate today, the way the teams are able to deliver solutions. They didn't make a whole lot of changes in that. So if the timelines are unrealistic, and in a lot of different industries, if the procurement cycles did not change, and the expectation is that you're going through a motion of transformation, but you're expected to deliver at the same pace that you did before, chances are there are going to be some challenges. The second thing, the one other thing I would highlight is budgetary. Um, so if you were delivering software a certain way and you've been doing that way for 4 or 5 years, it's a pretty stable cost structure versus when you're bringing about transformation. Transformation is expensive, so making sure that you have enough money to fund the transformation through. Otherwise, if you just had enough money for stage one, and your money has now dried up and you don't have enough funding for it to move to the next stage, guess what? It's just going to die down at that stage, right? So that's what structural is about. The cultural aspects are extremely important, right? So this is where the organizational change management comes into play. At least in my experience, there was a lot of resistance from our developer community because they felt that AI is out there to get them. And also, social media was full of that kind of stuff initially when we started our journey in March or April last year. So there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear mongering that, oh, AI is going to take away your job. The only jobs which will survive are X, Y, Z. Or if you're a developer, AI can do it much faster than you, so you will not have a job. So all that did translate into some fear among people, and they were resistant from using AI because they felt it's going to take away the job. And then it also was such a fast moving, such a pervasive and dynamic changes that was happening with the technology. It was unclear what success would look like in, as it would come through. And then the third thing, which is not on the slide, but what I felt pretty strongly that I saw with teams was, initially there was a lot of failure. There was a lot of, we still have. It's not like it's in the past. It still happens today. Um, AI doesn't return um, outputs in the way you expect it to. There's a lot of hand holding, a lot of reprompting, a lot of changes that you have to make till it gets to a stable enough place where it now understands what you need and it delivers what you need. But it takes a lot of work before it gets there. So a lot of people were a little skeptical if AI is going to deliver what they were looking for. And they were also afraid to go back to management with the failures they had. Um, and so I think that's a dilution of some of the agile values. Um, Agile value is fail early, learn quickly, and deliver right, right? So we saw some dilution of that because people there was the the psychological safety had ebbed away a little bit. The last is organizational barriers. That legacy system, and then we have new teams working together. That's not really well integrated. Not enough money or investment done in training some of that stuff, and then also measuring the wrong things. If you're measuring the wrong things, it's just not possible for you to make the right corrections. um, so those are some of the barriers. So fast forward to this new word called agile. So it's AI plus agile is agile. That's the middle word from the organization that I run, the meetup I run, it's called Loudon Agile Network. Um, I didn't register this. A lot of people told me to that I should have registered this word. I came up with this word long time ago when AI was just coming up. So, what is Agile? Agile really is um, an integration of Agile values, the Agile ways of working, because that's the only way this transformation can take place. Um, an AI transformation cannot work in a waterfall method. So it needs the discipline and as well as the flexibility or nimbleness of agile and the agile ways of working, which is shorter iterations, smaller teams, and feedback loops. Those are extremely important for AI transformation to happen. So the foundation, in my opinion, is agile ways of working, and then you bring in AI capabilities, which is the ability to deliver faster, the ability to catalyze your development process, and then integrate the different parts of the whole flow in a seamless manner using AI in different parts of the flow as well. And the third part is extremely important, which is again borrowed from Agile, which is a learning culture, right? If you stop investing in people's learning, or if people stop learning new things, transformation cannot happen. And so the whole concept of agile is agile ways of working, the values, the principles, and then the magic and the speed that AI brings, and then a culture that's continuously learning because it's just the change is very dynamic. All right, so I'm going to fast forward to a I don't want to call it a framework. I want to call it an AI enabled delivery loop, and it's starkly different from Scrum. When I talk about it and when I go through the motions, I think you'll recognize certain patterns. This is something that has evolved, and this is what I'm seeing as working. I also talk to a lot of AI transformation folks, meetups, and even like past colleagues as to what organizations are doing. Even before I go to that slide, I want to say that um, and I think Joel, you brought this up when you were talking, and so did Sheila. Um, so traditional Scrum, like 2 week sprint fixed, wherein hey, at the beginning of the sprint, we are going to look at the stories we want to work on based on our capacity, and then we're going to commit for 2 weeks, and then we're going to work on it for 2 weeks, and then come back and deliver, and then we'll have a retrospective to see what went well, what didn't go well. Great. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But fast forward to an AI ways of working, it, there has to be a change because you don't actually have to wait for 2 weeks to deliver something. You should be able to deliver something faster, much earlier. So, what I'm seeing from a lot of folks that I'm talking to is that it's a combination of Scrum and Kanban. So they've taken some good practices from Scrum, and they've taken the more lean part from Kanban and combined it together, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which is called Scrumban, which is a combination of Scrum and Kanban. Um, it leaves it up to the leads and the team, how many ceremonies or what ceremonies or events they want to do. Um, they uh, it's it's a continuous flow, but they still have some discipline of time built in. It's not very ceremonious, but they still understand the importance of planning, so they do planning as needed. So that's Scrumban, if you're familiar with it. Out of scope of this session to go too deep into this, but let me, without further ado, show you what is called the AI enabled delivery loop. So before I go to the outer loop, let me start from within the circle that you see here. So these are generic terms. This is not from a book. This is not from AI. This is part from the way I'm seeing teams are beginning to operate and get results. So it's based on that. So for AI delivery to happen well, it has to be the human in the loop. The orchestrators are going to be human. It's never going to be agents that are doing the orchestration. And for good AI transformation for AI transformation to be successful, it needs some foundational things in place even before you go. And you don't have to start with everything in the beginning. You can start small and iteratively build. But here are a few things that is absolutely critical to be mindful of. Again, it changes from industry to industry, but these are very important aspects to think about. And none of these can actually be afterthoughts, right? These are things which have to be in place, or you should be building towards it. So some of the foundational stuff, what is your strategy? Why are we doing this transformation? What does success look like? Where will we be, 2 years from now, right? You've heard about postcard from the future, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the vision. And how does the vision translate into strategy? How does the strategy translate into tactical activities? So being aligned or making sure your delivery is aligned to your strategy is extremely important. Architecture. A lot of times people are in a hurry. They just jump into pilots, but they've not thought about how exactly are they going to architect the solutions, especially if that organization has a lot of legacy code, legacy software that was created such a long time ago. How is that going to integrate with the code that Claude is going to generate? And then extremely important to have a very, very strong data strategy. Like, what kind of data are you going to be using? What kind of governance is there around data? And of course, there is security. I'm not going to go deep into it. You know what that is. From a quality perspective, oftentimes the testing shifts to the left with AI. So how are you going to do that? What is the process? What does the strategy look like? How much of your work are you going to be automating? You cannot rely on traditional ways of working, because when you work with AI, it's much faster, right? So do you have CI/CD in place? Do you have regression test suites in place for testing? Because you don't have the luxury of 2 weeks anymore. What about metrics, right? Are you measuring the right things, or are you still measuring what you did before? And then governance, extremely important, right? Is your governance grounded in reality? Are you being compliant? Are the ethical guidelines in place? All that comes under your governance. It's extremely important to make sure that humans are in the loop and they are in control of what your AI agents are doing. So that's kind of like the foundational stuff in the middle. And so let's start with the top. So as opposed to writing very, very detailed user stories, what I'm seeing is there is a shift from stories to specs. So stories are for human beings, specs are more for agents, because humans ask questions, they have discussions. But when you tell AI to do something, it seldom asks you questions. It'll do what it understood is right, and that's where so much hallucination happens, and you keep getting wrong data, wrong results till you get it right. So creating specs early is extremely very important, and having those specs ready. And I've seen some teams having detailed, design documents in place so that the agent can understand what is. Next is confirm readiness, right? Like from Agile, you remember definition of ready. So this is extremely important because, as I said, AI doesn't ask a lot of questions. It's important to understand that we are giving the right specs so that AI can build that in the right way, and you have an early delivery of things the way you wanted it. So once you confirm that and everybody has looked at it, and it's not typically not just a PO's responsibilities, it's engineering, it's product management, it's everybody kind of collaborates to make sure that the specs are right. And then you execute with AI. So the execution path is pretty fast. It doesn't take as long as it did with human beings. So it's pretty fast. So if you did spend a good amount of time in 1 and 2, that's the right thing to do, because 3 is pretty fast. Once you've done that, then it comes the time to review the code, whether you're using humans or using agents. You know, the code review is extremely important so that you can catch any challenges up early. And then you're promoting to test. So whichever environment your organization is using, whatever deployment methodology you have, you're using that. You're promoting to test. And then a test and verification happens at this point. But at least in my opinion, the majority of the challenges can be found in number 2. But again, depends on the model being used, depends on the organization's maturity. Early stages, you will find a lot of things in stage 6, but as they mature, they will start catching up a lot of, um, you know, uh, anomalies in stage 2. The next is prepping and releasing. Your standard release mechanism that you have in place is just that you're going to be releasing at a much faster pace. And then once you have deployed to production, then not just leaving it at that point, but also collecting data. It's extremely important to get feedback from users, and then you're learning from that experience and also supporting them as needed. And again, it's a cycle. So it stops at 8 and again starts at 1. Um, there are 8 iterations here. Again, some of the things from Agile is the continuous flow, and this is a very scalable way of doing things as long as you have the foundational inner things in place, right? So again, this is not a framework. This can be, adaptable to your organization. But these are the 8 very important things. And again, you can add other processes if needed. But if you do even just a minimum of this, I'm seeing that teams are getting a lot of success because of this. All right, so let's talk about like the before and after. So in the sprint, like 2-week sprint or 1-week sprints, the PO was writing the story, and if there are any gaps, you discover during the sprint. Now with AI-enabled delivery, the the specs are written upfront with the acceptance criteria, and this is agreed upon before you start doing any development work, right? So this is like, because you cannot keep going back and forth because it costs you tokens nowadays. That's the ground reality, and it costs you time. Next is, before was just human only coding, and AI tools were just to help you know support them in the process. But fast forward to today, um, the developer is the orchestrator, and AI is doing all of the work and then even does the review. Next is, oh, I went too fast. Testing used to be very manual or some level of automation, and again depends on the delivery pressure. A lot of teams were doing mini waterfalls during the sprint. Now QA defines the test from spec right in the beginning, right? So it's pretty much spec driven development, and you have, or test driven development, if you will, like if you're used to saying that. But it's moved from TDD to spec driven development, and the testing also emerges from the specs that are written in the beginning. All right, so deployment. Let's talk about deployment. So batch release at the end of the sprint is how a lot of teams used to do things. Fast forward, it is ship when done. This is what Agile has been talking about all the while, right? You don't have to wait. If it is ready to be shipped, ship it. The best place for software to be is in the hands of the users. And operations or DevOps, right? This was very reactive in the past, incidents, etc., etc. Now there's observability. The AI is monitoring all the telemetry, pretty much 24/7. It self-solves some of those problems. There's a lot of maturity that has happened in DevOps as well. All right, so I think I covered most of this. Salah, how am I doing with time?
Yeah, we're good. We're good in time.
Okay,
We're
all right,
we have
perfect.
some time.
All right, so let's talk about this. So this can be controversial, but I think it's important to talk about this. Um, and this is like a couple of things that we talked about in the last slides, but fixed sprints can create friction in AI-enabled teams. And here's where I'm seeing the friction. Um, the processes haven't changed across the organization. They're still using the processes that they did. Uh, the teams that are using AI, they are able to produce within the first 3 or 4 days. Well, within the first 4 or 5 days of the sprint, they actually have things which are ready to be deployed, um, or ready to be put into actual use. But then, since rest of the teams are doing a 2 week cycle, they have to wait because everybody follows a particular cycle. So the benefits that you actually got from getting the efficiency or optimization are not being fully utilized because you are stuck with an old mold. Um, so organizations need to find ways to break that mold and find ways to be able to deliver that. Whatever is ready, how do we deliver that much faster? That change hasn't happened in organizations. They're producing faster, but they're still waiting for a longer period of time to realize the benefits of it. All right, so I told you about Kanban and Scrum and how Scrumban takes the best of both worlds. So in Kanban, work is pulled; it's not pushed. Meaning, in a sprint, you pre-commit to 2 weeks worth of work, and then you start working on it, and you pick stories, or stories get self-allocated by team members. It's not allocated by the product owner. But in Kanban, you have ways in which you have a backlog, then you have ready for development. For example, I'm taking a very simplistic example, and you have tickets that are ready to be worked. Whoever has the capacity and capability, they're going to pull that story and they're going to work on it and then push it to the next column. And the whole idea is to go from left to right as efficiently as possible. So if teams are used to working in 2 week sprints, which oftentimes, at least I've seen, is that the mini waterfall, in the last 2 3 days of the sprint, most of the work gets done. Um, in AI enabled teams, when they're using Scrumban, using pull, they want to be able to pull work as soon as they're free so that they can work on it. But it's challenged sometimes because of a calendar driven approach here, right? So that's the friction. Um, Velocity, of course, as agilists, we never liked the word velocity because it was misused by a lot of leaders. Um, and a lot of times because they don't understand it. That's the only thing that they understood. So it got a bad rap. But at least for agilists, velocity was important, but it's an output. It's not an outcome. It's an output. It's a result. It's a metric, and like you can use it in the right way. Like if you're planning and you take the average of the last 3 sprints, the throughput or the velocity, and that kind of gives you a good sense of how much you should commit to in that particular sprint. Fast forward to AI, those metrics are not as important anymore. What is more important is your cycle time, your lead time. How long does it take from the time a ticket enters your system before it exits the system, right? Pretty much when does it come, when does it leave, cradle to grave. How much time did it take? If it moves fast, it shows that you have high efficiency. It takes very long to move from initial to exit. It means that there are some flaws in your flow, and we have to now find where is it getting stuck so that we can fix it, right? So it's very lead time and cycle time driven, and velocity is not as important at this point. I hope that makes sense. Um, I'm seeing more and more of this, which is review is the bottleneck. Um, the problem is as simple as this, right? AI is able to generate code or even test cases, whatever you take, at a very, very fast rate. And let's say that it is at a mature stage that is delivering good outputs, but very fast. But then have we put humans or process or even agents in place to validate and verify the outputs that are coming from AI? Uh, the ground reality is we have not. We are still adjusting to that. We have still not gotten adjusted to the high speed at which it's delivering. So you deliver a lot, but we are taking much longer to do the review, and therefore value realization is not happening. All right, so I'm going to move to the next, just to get a better understanding, to share some better understanding of how this works. What dev AI agents do, what test AI agents do. So when you're working with an AI agent, right? It's not a human being. It's part of your team, but it's not a human being. It's still part of your team. It's an AI agent. So AI agents, they work on specs, right? If you give them specifications, it knows exactly what to do and it'll do it. Clear acceptance criteria, clear constraints, in some cases, clear business rules. Um, and then it understands your specs. Again, depends on how you've prompted it. It gives you outputs. It develops codes very fast. And then you can have another agent which can test what your dev agent did. So that's fast forward to the next one. So the same specs that were written for development can be utilized to write test cases, and that's the test AI agent does that. So it uses those initial test cases plus other scenarios through edge cases, and it generates and creates a pretty strong library of tests, which is a test suite, and it tests everything at record speed. You can have multiple testers doing the test, and then it creates a report that human beings can take a look at, and then make judgment calls based on where they are in, where they feel was the goal and what they have reached and how much adjustments they have to make till the outputs are ready for shipping. All right, so let's talk about estimation a little bit. In the past, the way we have learned to develop software, we used to estimate, hey, how long does it take for the team to produce working software, right? Working software is what we were looking for. How long does it take to do that? So the estimation has changed now slightly. So we have to be very mindful, as I said, to not just for it to develop the code, but how long would it take for us to review and validate the output, saying that, yeah, this is pristine, this is what we're looking for. The next step is like a story took 3 days because coding and testing, I'm sorry, I have a typo there. Coding and testing took 3 days. Now, fast forward is it takes 2 hours because review takes 2 hours because the development time is negligible. So AI adoption, before using AI, our estimates, because they change, right? An estimate is an estimate, right? It's not a finite number. Oftentimes we would be wrong, and then over a period of time, teams will get better. But with AI, the adoption has changed how we estimate, right? I mean, AI is smart enough to learn quickly through its mistakes and become better and better at estimation. All right, so I talked about metrics in the inner circle. So let me touch a little bit on that. So at least
Could
my
I,
experience.
Toby?
Yeah,
Would it
go ahead.
be okay to back up a step
I can. Do you want me to go one slide
to
back?
the estimation slide? It's okay, either way, with or without the slide.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm here.
I'd like to push back a little bit on the estimate stuff.
Okay.
And
Do you
not
mind
because,
if we hold the questions to the end? I want to make sure.
oh,
Is it
sure, sure,
okay if
sure.
you hold the thought?
Yeah, before you were asking for, okay, go right ahead. Sure. Yep.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. We'll get to it. All right. So, all right. So the four metric domains. So the organization I work for, we use a company called Antenna.dev. They used to be called Software.com. And I'm not putting a plug in here for them or anything like that. But it was an eye-opening experience for me when I started looking at things um, using at that time software.com. They just last couple of months ago they changed to antenna.dev. So basically they gather all their information from GitHub or GitLab if you all use GitLab, and it looks at a bunch of different statistics and metrics. Um, so I told you that the importance of flow metrics has become extremely important, and there's no surprise here because we're moving from Scrum to more of a Kanban model, and Kanban always had throughput related metrics in place, and as more and more teams are now slowly moving towards Kanban or Scrumban, cycle flow, lead, all of those metrics become extremely important. And also PRs, right? Like your pull request. What is your hygiene when it comes to pull request? How long does it take from the time a PR came into play, and when was it first reviewed? How long is it open, etc., etc. So a whole lot of more focus on flow metrics is extremely important. But again, in a very generic way, if you think about it, there are four buckets. Um, you know, First one is your operations, things I talked about, your cycle time, your lead times, how long does it take for your stage checks, whether it's review or QA, and then how much of work is getting automated so that we are not spending too much time on toil, right? Next one, this is less important, but still from a transformation angle is good to know, is hey, how many of which tools are organizations using or different teams using across your organization? And then um, do the teams trust the outputs that are coming from AI? Because trust develops over a period of time. Initially, there is very low trust because there are hallucinations. It develops wrong. It gives you the wrong outputs all the time. But over a period of time, you keep getting better. And then outcomes. Like I feel that outcomes are really hinged to the strategy that you had in place, and then holistically, you're looking at um, you know I personally think it's the financial aspects of it. You know, are you? I don't want to say how much cost you saved, but how much cost avoidance has happened, and what efficiency are you getting from both your human and AI resources? So that's your outcome focus metrics. The next one is governance. So this is about compliance. Do you have the traceability, et cetera, et cetera. So this is related to four domains that if you're starting on your journey, definitely think about it. All right. So this question comes up a lot about, hey, um, I am X. Um, how is AI going to change my role? So this is a very, very simple way of looking at things. So I'm just going to take an example of a Scrum Master, right? So currently, a Scrum Master is focused on any kind of impediments, the blockers that are happening, and how can you do better and helping the teams get better, become more efficient. Agile is never the goal. Agility is the goal. How can we deliver in a more predictable manner. So what I'm seeing is that initially a lot of Scrum Masters are using AI to just do some of the things they're already doing, but in a much faster way. For example, they can use AI to understand their flow metrics better. AI, if you train it right, if you have the right prompts in place, it'll give you recommendations and suggestions to resolve the issues. Right, that's in the near term, and then it's just helping you to do things. And in the long term, though, Scrum Masters can use AI to be able to do much, much more predictable delivery um, that is really aligned to the scope and the roadmap that the organizational leaders had put in place and leading to financial and efficiency gains. Right. So this is how AI is changing the roles on the teams. I kept it pretty simple. So that's what I wanted to talk about, the roles. And of course, these things will definitely evolve as we go forward. All right, so I'm going to now move to a very interesting slide because this shows the results from a real transformation. The organization where I work, it's $100 million organization that is global, with offices in India, the UK, Cincinnati, and in Virginia. And so some of our clients are the U.S. Army, Northrop Grumman, Rolls-Royce, Boeing. These are some of our customers. It's a highly regulated industry, and there are lots of compliance constraints in place because that's the environment we operate in. Initially, when we started our AI journey, which was around April last year, there were scattered practices. Some teams were doing some AI, very, very initial. We were just using Codex at that point, two or three teams. Um, and then Copilot became popular. We added Copilot. Um, we uh, we did a hackathon in, I want to say, June last year. There were 22 teams that participated in that globally, and in a single day across the globe with three different time zones. And we got amazing ideas from that hackathon, and those ideas were put into place both for our customers and internal use. So that really worked for us. And over a period of time, what we asked the teams to do is to find opportunities in their teams where AI can bring about efficiency in our internal processes and catalyze and improve the experience, the user experience for our customers as well. So we put a challenge, and every team came up with one or two use cases, and they started working on it. So that's how our journey started. So that's kind of the context. So this data is about a month old or so. So we have about 87% AI tool adoption across the entire company. It's probably gone up a little bit, about 87%, which is pretty high for about just over a year. Um, our productivity gains is about 144%. The next metric that I'm going to talk about is very interesting and is often talked about in the AI realm. Is without adding a single new person, we added the developer capacity of 112 people. Now, just another way of looking at the throughput that we are getting from AI is of an additional 112 people without spending a dime on any of them. Of course, token costs and other things are things in place, but you know, without adding a single human, that's how much we got. Our lead time reduction was about 20%. In the grand scale of things, that actually means a lot, right? 20% is a pretty good number. All right, so these are real results, right? That I'm not pulling this from from Gartner or from Deloitte or from somewhere else. This is from my organization, and all this data is from antenna.dev. So this is a 12-month measurement, which is real. I don't want to go too deep onto this, but being pragmatic is extremely important, right? Like, don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to solve all the problems. Start with one or two things and start using AI experiments. And it's okay during the pilot to fail and falter, and then make the corrections and become better at what you're doing. Definitely think of some leaders that you're seeing when you're doing the AI transformation, people who are stepping up, people who are passionate about bringing AI together. Those are the people that I feel that can really help move your transformation forward. So focus on them, recognize them, give them the tools they need, empower them. Extremely important. Um, what does not work? So just like for Agile, there were so many certifications, so many trainings in place. I'm seeing the same pattern being repeated for AI as well. There is so many fake certification, fake training out there, and there's so much AI slop. So training the people the right way, giving them the right experiences to learn is going to be extremely important. Um, so think wisely about how you're going to train your people. Um, there is a school of thought of let them learn by doing. Sure, that's good, but they should learn how each tool works. And luckily, all of the popular tools have so much free training that comes with it. I would say let them start with that, and then you can learn as you go, right? That's going to really help. And then what does not work is putting pressure on team members without giving them the tools or empowering them. So I'll leave you with a simple framework um, uh, called LEAP. I had written about this in January 2025. So the LEAP is basically a framework for you to get started. So in your organization, month one, identify, locate the areas where you think AI can work. Some use cases. Baseline the metrics and start with your pilot. The E is experiment. Once you've identified the use cases, start working on it. Spec first. Um, don't need a whole lot of processes. You're experimenting, but make sure that you are doing a retrospective. So periodically and iteratively, you're learning through feedback loops and getting better. Analyze the results that you got from quarter one. 3 months is a good amount of time to study. Analyze, rinse, repeat, right? Whatever you've had the learning, apply that to the quarter two. Start tracking the right things, and at the end of the quarter two, you would have gotten a good amount of maturity. Now, of course, you can continue to do that if you want to do, or cross pollinate to other teams. But then year one, once you have 2 quarters under your belt, it's that's the time where you can spread the sunshine, right? You can take that into different teams and continue to build. And that pretty much is my presentation. We have a few minutes left uh, for questions. If there are no questions, I have some questions here to prompt you. Uh, I know, Joel, you had a question. We can start with yours. And then, Salah, I will let you facilitate the rest of the questions.
Sure. I guess it's kind of part question, part challenge, part comment, I guess.
Okay, sure.
Um, yeah, I'm into metrics too. And one thing that comes to mind is this whole thing about estimating. Because, sure, estimation, if you're talking about build times of an hour, don't really help too much. But I get the sense that that lens is too narrow. Because a lot of what we're doing is creating the need to write clear expectations at a level that, frankly, were never done before.
Yes.
So I feel like excluding that part of the work from the estimate is a little disingenuous.
I can see where you're coming
And
from.
I don't mean that
Absolutely.
in an evil way. It's just that
Yeah.
if we really want to think about, does it make sense to estimate the work? Well, we all work with uncertainty, and VUCA and all that stuff is a big part of what goes on in software development. If you feature A, B, and C, the amount of time it takes to actually get clear on a prompt or set of prompts that's going to one-shot the output could literally be hours or days to
Well,
get.
yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so I guess what I'm getting at is I'm not convinced that the idea of estimates goes out the window. Maybe estimates for the code generation itself, but even then, there's going to be some features that, this is going to be 3 minutes generation. Well, this one is going to be 12 agents running for 4 hours. So yeah, that's my basic.
So here's where I agree with you. In philosophically, I agree with you. The real challenge that I'm seeing teams struggle with is
Hmm.
their inability to know, like predictability is a goal, right? Perfection is not, right? Some level of predictability. And a prediction is a prediction. The predictions don't often come true. But the
Sure,
idea is just like estimate, an estimate
sure,
is an
sure.
estimate. It's not absolute. So the idea is to become better at predicting. And of course, you're going to have a variance. So initially, let's say you have a 40% variance. The goal is to iteratively become better where you have plus or minus 10% variance, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that the humans that are writing the specs or the prompts um, for the agents that they have in place, the
Hmm.
agent also learns iteratively, right? Like
Sure.
that's the whole thing about AI and ML, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's learning over a period of time till it gets better. So I felt like in my journey, September, October last year, there was a huge variance um, of having the confidence that what we committed to will be delivered, right? We
Mm.
were having higher variances.
Mhm.
By March, April this year, teams were producing 2 times what they were producing before because the humans became better at estimation,
Mhm.
and AI itself became better because it was building a library in the back, so it has better context.
Well, and the
So
models got better. Yeah,
context engineering is what the word that you hear a lot about now,
yeah.
is how do we make it as clear as possible to a non-human developer to develop it, right? Because you're giving it, the more clear it is, the better the results are going to be, right?
Sure.
So I'm agreeing with you. And again, the battle is not against estimation, but it's about how do we become better at
Ah,
estimation, right?
okay. I think I
Yeah.
misread then what the
Yeah.
center of the comment was. Yeah.
Okay. Are
And
we good?
similarly about the whole time box and velocity, and yes, velocity is evil and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But but um, but there is, and I mentioned this earlier, I think there's a value of incremental build that people have lost, I think, temporarily, because it seems like tokens are free. And the minute tokens are not free anymore, like people realize what it really costs,
Yeah. Yeah.
that,
Oh yeah.
there's value, and this is where I think the time boxes, whatever length, maybe it's a day, 2 weeks, whatever, a
Yep.
week. And by the way, there are time boxes in Kanban too. They just don't talk about it. It's,
Yeah.
cyclic reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but I guess what I'm getting at is that if we totally throw the idea of time boxes out the window, you lose instrumentation on how are we doing towards larger goals. And I'm purposefully talking about this in an abstract way. That,
Mhm.
if let's say you have a project that a big project is going to take a while. It's just with AI, it doesn't mean that like a year-long project
Yeah.
takes two
Yeah.
weeks. And
I can
so,
see that.
yeah, sort of what I'm after is, because I do so much work with teams today, with even Scrum, of like trying to get them to put their eye on the ball of what's going on with the release, not the sprint. That the value of sprints was not the sprint as an independent thing, but it gives you a way to get a rough sense of, are we on glide slope to hit the release?
Yeah, like taking a
Because
more
I'm hoping
holistic
that
view
that
of it.
doesn't
Yeah.
get totally released in this whole
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. So, Joel, the only thing I would say is that actually I'm in agreement with what you're saying, and therefore I feel just Kanban, which can be construed as do whatever you want. I don't care. No, it's not. We still
Well,
have
that's not
a
real
sense of
Kanban any
time
more than
box.
the Scrum we're talking about is real Scrum.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So I think Scrumban I feel is a good.
Yeah,
I don't want to say compromise, but I think it's the strength of being able to pick on stories dynamically as they become available or needed
sure,
or
sure,
prioritized.
sure.
At the same time, you still have like, okay, we have a 2 week, right? We are still operating in a 2 week. The
Yeah,
organization I'm working at, the whole organization gets a lot of benefit from a bi-weekly company-wide demo.
yep,
This is where all the leaders of the organization show up, from product, from sales. Everybody, a huge number of people show up, and teams showcase the work they've done. Um, they really like that because it's so easy for teams to just get siloed and do whatever
sure,
without
sure.
knowing what the rest of the organization is doing.
Yeah,
Now we are seeing cross pollination of ideas. Hey, that thing that you made, I really love how you designed your AI. Can I, your UI? Can I come by tomorrow and talk to you because we're working on that? We could take a couple of ideas from you, right? Stuff like that, or like, oh, you I see that you have a prompt library you've built for your product. We're building something similar. uh, would it be okay if you share your prompt library so we don't have to start from scratch? Well,
sure.
absolutely, let's do it. So people are seeing value out of it, and we're seeing so much collaboration out of this, so we decided to keep it, right? um,
Right.
Traditional or anti-process people would say, oh, that's like vanity, you don't need it. But as
Yeah,
long as people are getting benefits from it, why
yeah.
not? Right?
And that's
That,
that's
at
really
least,
what
yeah,
that's really
yeah,
what I was trying to get to is the same thing. And you know, yeah, they call it a in Kanban a service delivery review.
yeah,
You know,
exactly,
the idea of
exactly. Yeah,
Scrumban, I think a lot of the argument about Scrum versus Kanban is kind of spurious anyway, but that's a whole
yeah,
other
yeah,
question.
absolutely.
But
Well, thank
you
you,
know,
Joel, for
it's
your
really, are you
questions.
using flow metrics or not? And you know, yes, agreed. The uh, yeah. In any case, it sounds like we actually agree much more than we disagree on anything. So there you go.
All right, so
Thanks.
Salah, we have
Yeah.
4 more minutes. I wonder if anybody else
Yeah.
has questions or.
I don't hear any questions. I just want to thank you, Toby, for this insightful presentation. It's kicking off our AI series.
That's good.
Um, and yeah, I think there's a lot of takeaways that one of them is like it depends on where you are, where your organization is, as you
Hmm.
showed like the different stages and how your team is using it.
Yeah.
Whether it's locally, they're starting to experiment with it, or at the organization level, like we've seen in the agile adoption in general, or any type of change. So appreciate your insights and thank you everyone for joining. Next meetup we have coming up in July will be also topic about AI, your new team member or frenemy, and that will be presented by Allison Herbert, and she is in the product management product space. So please join us next time um, for the next event. Um, Again, thank you, Toby, and thanks everyone for taking the time and take a break from the World Cup games to join us and join this session.
Thank
Uh,
you, Salah. Thank you again for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Toby.
Okay,
Really good. Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank you.